I didn't even make it to the front porch. The gate to my parents' old estate, now technically my sister's, opened just wide enough for a security guard in a suit to stick his head out and look me up and down like I was a door-to-door salesman. Before I could say a word, I heard her voice. "Don't let her in. She doesn't belong here." Caroline. I hadn't seen my sister in almost 5 years, not since the funeral. She'd always had a talent for making everything about her, even grief. The guard turned to her for confirmation, and she stepped forward. Designer sunglasses, fake smile, wearing a dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. She looked like money, and she knew it. "I thought we made this clear years ago," she said, arms folded, voice loud enough for the other staff in the yard to hear. "You chose to play soldier. This isn't your home anymore." "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I just want to see Mom." Her mouth twisted into a grin. "Oh, now you care about Mom?" "I've always cared." "Right," she said, dragging the word out like it tasted bad. "You cared so much, you joined the Navy and disappeared for 7 years. While I stayed, I took care of her. I took care of everything. Everything." She meant the inheritance, the properties, the business. All of it. My mom had early onset Alzheimer's. When I got the message from a nurse that she wasn't doing well, I filed for emergency leave and flew in without calling first. That was on me. But I didn't expect a welcome. Just, "Not this. I don't need anything from you," I said. "You never did," she shot back. "And look where it got you. Still chasing rank and medals like they mean something in real life. This isn't your world, Julia. You don't get to walk back in here like nothing happened." I clenched my jaw, tried to keep calm. I didn't want a scene, but my fists were tight enough to leave marks in my palms. "I'm not here to walk in. I just want 5 minutes with Mom." Caroline raised an eyebrow. "Mom's resting, and she doesn't even remember you." That one hit. She looked me up and down again. No uniform, civilian clothes, no fancy car, just a backpack and rental keys. Then she laughed soft and cutting. "Get out," she said. "You're a nobody." The gate shut in my face. And that was it. I stood there for a minute, the Florida sun cooking the back of my neck, trying to decide whether to ring again or just leave. 2 groundskeepers looked over at me from the side yard, and I could feel them trying to place me, probably figured I was lost. Or maybe I used to work there. When I walked away, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even look back. But deep down, something clicked. Something small, quiet, but sharp. Not because she'd insulted me. That was normal. But because of what she said about Mom. That Mom wouldn't remember me. And I needed to know if that was true. If you've ever been told by your own blood that you're nothing, feel free to leave a comment below. And if stories like this pull you in, hit subscribe. No fake drama, just real stories that hit. I drove across town and checked into a basic motel. Not the kind of place Caroline would ever be caught dead in, which honestly made it perfect. Cheap coffee, scratchy towels, buzzing AC unit that sounded like it was dying. But it had a bed, and right now, I just needed a plan. Step 1. Check in on Mom. For real. Even if she didn't recognize me. Step 2. Figure out what the hell Caroline meant by, "I took care of everything." Because the last time I spoke to my father right before deployment, he told me the estate would be split, that Caroline would handle the business side, and I'd have full rights to the lake house and one of the properties out in Street Pete. That was the deal. But when he died, everything went to her. Every cent, every title. And I got a voicemail from a lawyer telling me I wasn't listed on the final will. No follow-up, no explanation, just gone. Back then, I let it go. I told myself it didn't matter. I was active duty, out of state, and too tired to fight over family scraps. I had other things to prove. Now, it didn't feel like scraps anymore. I wasn't angry yet, but the kind of silence Caroline used was dangerous. She didn't shout or throw things. She cut people out of pictures and smiled while doing it. And if she'd erased me from more than just the family photo wall, I needed to know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, hearing her voice again. "You're a nobody." In the Navy, I'd seen people break under pressure, men twice my size. I'd seen people cry under helmets, whispering for moms they hadn't called in years. I'd led a team during a blackout op in the South Pacific, got us out with no power, no satellite, and no backup. I'd been Ghost 13. But none of that mattered to Caroline. To her, I was just the sister who left. Fine. Let her think that. Let her think she won. She hadn't even seen what I'd become. And the funny thing is, she still had no idea who Ghost 13 was. Not yet. I didn't sleep. By morning, I wasn't even tired, just locked in. I got dressed, grabbed the file folder I always kept buried in my go bag, and stared at the one photo I'd brought with me. The only one that hadn't been thrown out. It was from high school, Caroline and me at our dad's retirement ceremony. She was front and center in a cream dress, smiling like she owned the Navy. I was off to the side in a loose-fitting ROTC uniform, 2 sizes too big, looking like I'd wandered into the wrong room. Even in that moment, I remember knowing where I stood. The truth was, I'd always known. Caroline had been the blueprint valedictorian, homecoming queen, full ride to Duke, internships before she could legally drink. Dad used to joke she'd own Florida by 30. He wasn't wrong. When she was 29, she flipped her 3rd real estate firm and made her first $1 million. Meanwhile, I was off base in Japan, eating vending machine ramen and fixing radar arrays during typhoon season. But that's what I'd wanted, or at least, what I thought I wanted. The Navy had structure. It had rules. It didn't care about family politics or whether I wore makeup to Thanksgiving. It respected competence, not charm. Still, I'd be lying if I said it never stung. Especially growing up in that house. Dad ran the home like a base-tight schedule, high expectations, zero patience for anything soft. Caroline thrived in it. She played the part, sharp, strategic, knew exactly when to smile, when to push back, when to play the obedient daughter. Me? I was the opposite. Quiet. Blunt. Always asking why. Always in trouble for tone. I didn't play games. And I didn't suck up. He hated that. I remember one dinner, maybe I was 14, when I told him I wanted to enlist. Not just ROTC. I meant real boots on ground service. He laughed. Actually laughed. You? He said, like I'd just said I wanted to be an astronaut. Julia. Sweetheart, you cry during allergy commercials. You'd last 10 minutes in a real unit. Caroline joined in, of course. Maybe she could be the morale officer, she said, smirking behind her wine glass. Hand out cookies, write poetry, stuff like that. That was the game. She tore me down with a joke so clean you couldn't even call it cruel. I didn't say anything that night. I just sat there, swallowing the heat rising in my throat. Later, Dad pulled me aside and said, "Don't embarrass yourself trying to prove something. You're not built for it." That line followed me into every room I walked into for the next 5 years. When I finally did join the Navy, Caroline told everyone it was a phase. Said I was acting out because I didn't know what to do with my life. She loved the story where I was the rebellious, lost little sister who ran off to play soldier. That narrative worked for her. And when our father died, she owned that story completely. She organized everything: the funeral, the guests, the press release. She even had the obituary rewritten to make it sound like she was his only child. I saw it in print while deployed off Guam, survived by his daughter, Caroline Carter. That was it. No Julia. No service member. No lieutenant. Just gone. I remember sitting in the mess hall with the paper in one hand and a packet of freeze-dried eggs in the other, thinking, so this is how it ends. I didn't call her. I didn't argue. I just folded the paper and went back to work. Because in that moment, I realized she'd already buried me before Dad even hit the ground. But here's the thing she didn't understand. While she was flipping condos and cutting checks, I was building something else. A record, a reputation, missions no one talked about, equipment no one admitted we had, units that didn't officially exist. And slowly, quietly, my name, my real one, the one they used behind locked doors, started to matter. I never rubbed it in, never sent medals home, never posted rank updates, because deep down, I knew none of that would change Caroline's version of me. She didn't hate me because I was weak. She hated me because I never played by her script. And now, years later, standing outside her gate like a stranger, I realized something. She still didn't see me. Not the real me. But I wasn't here to be seen. I was here to get answers. I packed the photo back into my folder and slid it into the bag. It didn't matter who she thought I was. I wasn't coming back for her approval. I'd stopped needing that a long time ago. What I needed was truth. And if Caroline had rewritten it once, I'd make damn sure she didn't do it again. I wasn't thinking about my sister the day it happened. That's the funny part. The day everything changed, when I earned the name she still doesn't know, I was focused on a radar anomaly and a jammed coffee machine. We were somewhere in the South China Sea. Not close enough to be a threat, but close enough to matter. I was part of a small detachment assigned to a destroyer tech support with teeth. The kind of team that didn't exist on paper. My job was to monitor comms, patch blind spots, and catch signals that weren't supposed to be there. That morning, we'd picked up a series of repeating pulses that didn't belong to us. It was clean. Too clean. Like someone wanted us to see it, but not decode it. The CO wasn't convinced it was anything serious. Just stray traffic from a passing cargo ship, he said. But it wasn't. And when our defense system glitched twice during a standard simulation, I knew something was off. By noon, our entire tactical network was acting drunk. Response times delayed, internal logs wiped mid-action, encrypted files suddenly throwing checksum errors. Nobody panicked. Not yet. These things happened. Usually. But this one felt different. And then everything dropped. No weapons, no radar, no comms, total blackout. We were dead in the water. And we weren't alone out there. The bridge went quiet. No alarms. Just silence. Then came the questions. Is this a drill? Is it an EMP? Where's the backup protocol? There wasn't one. I remember hearing the CO say something about rerouting control to the backup node. But I'd already seen the logs, there was no reroute. Whatever hit us had mapped the entire system. It was already inside. So, I didn't ask for permission. I ran below deck, bypassed the command line firewall, and yanked power from the auxiliary systems manually. That tripped a hard reset. Ugly. But it gave me just enough time to break the loop and flush the system. 2 minutes later, we had partial comms. 6 minutes after that, radar flickered back on. And when it did, we saw them 2 vessels shadowing us. No flags, no ID. They peeled off fast once we lit up again. No one ever officially confirmed who they were, but we knew. By evening, systems were restored, and I was back at my workstation, dripping sweat, eyes burning, typing out the last line of my debrief. That's when the executive officer came in. Didn't say much, just stood there, arms folded, watching me like I'd grown a second head. You the one who bypassed the core security loop? He asked. I nodded. He whistled low. Ballsy. Desperate, I said. No, he replied. Smart. Ghost-level smart. I didn't get it at first. I thought he was just making a joke. But the next day, it showed up in the comm log. Call sign assigned, Ghost 13. It was supposed to be a temporary tag used for anonymous reporting during internal reviews. But the name stuck, not just in my unit. Word spread fast among certain teams. The kind that operated sideways, off-chart. Teams that didn't use real names. Ghost 13 meant 2 things. You moved quiet, and you didn't screw up. And from that point on, that's who I became. I never told my family. Never bragged. I didn't want to explain something they'd never understand. Caroline would have rolled her eyes. My father probably would have asked why it wasn't Ghost 1. But in the right rooms, the name mattered. It opened doors. Not flashy ones, but the kind with reinforced locks and retina scanners. I started getting pulled into ops I wasn't technically cleared for, sat in on briefings I wasn't supposed to be in. Nobody questioned it. Because I got results. And I didn't need credit. The truth is, I liked being invisible. Out there, I wasn't the screw-up little sister, or the weird one who joined the military instead of climbing the corporate ladder. I wasn't compared to anyone. I wasn't a disappointment. I was just Ghost 13. And the more I wore that name, the more I realized how small the old version of me had been. Caroline could have her perfect reputation, and her magazine spreads, and her goddamn waterfront estate. She could have the last name that turned heads at fundraising dinners. I had something better. I had a name no one could fake. And no one could buy. The invitation came in a white envelope with gold lettering, like it was a wedding, memorial gathering, in honor of Robert Carter. Hosted by Caroline Carter. No mention of family, no mention of me. It didn't matter. I showed up anyway. Not to make a scene. Not to prove anything, I just wanted to stand where my father used to stand, even if I wasn't invited to the spotlight. The event was held at a golf club in Winter Park, the kind of place that smells like money and lavender hand soap. The guest list looked like a political fundraiser. Retired admirals, business partners, high-level donors. Half the town's elite circled around overpriced wine, talking about a man they never really knew beyond boardrooms and country clubs. Caroline had turned it into a press opportunity. Big posters of Dad next to her smiling face. A video montage rolling on a loop, clips from his speaking engagements, handshakes with mayors, her standing next to him in every single shot. You'd think she was the one who'd served 26 years in the Navy. I walked in wearing a black blouse and dark jeans. No uniform, no insignia, just simple, clean lines, no flash. I didn't need it, but I may as well have walked in wearing camo and a grenade. Her eyes locked on me from across the room. There it was. That smile that wasn't a smile. The one that meant she was about to perform. She broke from her circle of VIPs and walked over. A wine glass in hand, heels clicking like she was on a runway. I didn't even get out a full hi before she said it. You're brave for showing up. I raised an eyebrow. It's Dad's memorial. Exactly. And you weren't listed on the RSVP. I didn't know grief was invitation only. She laughed sharp and effortless. Just loud enough for the people around us to hear. They leaned in slightly, sensing the tension but not wanting to look obvious. I just didn't want you to feel out of place, she said. This crowd's a little elevated. I kept my face still. Don't worry. I've worked with generals who eat with plastic forks. She blinked. That one landed harder than she expected. Before she could pivot, a man in a navy blue suit stepped up beside her. Older, gray at the temples. Caroline, is this your sister? She hesitated, just for a beat. Yes. This is Julia. She's well. She's been away. Navy. I extended a hand. Lieutenant Carter, pleased to meet you. He gave me a firm shake, then tilted his head. Wait, Carter? Navy? His expression changed. You're not, Ghost 13, are you? Caroline's face didn't just fall. It collapsed. The people standing nearby turned, subtly but unmistakably. Caroline froze. That name wasn't supposed to exist in this room. Not in her world, I answered calmly. That's what they call me sometimes. Just for grow. The man's eyebrows went up. I've heard about you. That blackout op in the South Pacific, was that you? I gave the kind of smile that doesn't confirm anything but doesn't deny it either. He nodded slowly, impressed. Hell of a reputation. We could have used someone like you at Joint Command. Caroline forced a laugh. Isn't it funny how things sound bigger in stories? The man didn't laugh with her. Instead, he raised his glass to me. I didn't toast back. I walked past her and headed toward the back of the room, where the photo wall was set up. Every single frame showed Dad shaking hands, giving speeches, posing at ceremonies with her. No family photos. No candid shots. Nothing real. I scanned the wall until I saw the one picture she'd missed. It was tucked in the bottom corner. Me, in uniform, standing next to him at his final commissioning event. His hand on my shoulder, both of us looking dead ahead. The only photo where she wasn't in the frame. I stood in front of it longer than I meant to. Long enough for people to start looking. Caroline eventually made her way over again, voice low this time. You really think you're going to steal this moment from me? I turned to her. I don't want your moment. I just want the truth to have a seat in the room. She looked past me, scanning to see who might be listening. You think throwing around some nickname from the Navy changes what this family is? She asked. No, I said. But it changes what you can hide. She took a step closer, voice sharpening. You walked away, Julia. You left. No, I said. You pushed me out. She didn't respond. Because she knew it. And for the first time since I'd stepped onto that carpet, she didn't have a comeback. I wasn't trying to be noticed. That's never been my thing. I was standing by the hors d'oeuvres table, sipping flat, sparkling water and waiting for the room to shift back into Caroline's orbit like it always did. But the man from earlier, the one who recognized my call sign, didn't move on. He hovered nearby, watching me the way someone watches a live wire. Curious, careful, and a little too interested. Eventually, he made his way back over. "You really are her, aren't you?" I glanced at him. "Depends who you think I am." He gave a short laugh, then looked around and lowered his voice. "Ghost 13. The blackout recovery in the SCS. The comms patch job off Guam. You cracked a foreign op code in under 7 minutes with no satellite backup." I didn't confirm or deny anything. "I read the internal briefings," he said. "I was part of CENTCOM until last year. They blacked out names in the reports, but we all heard the chatter." He extended his hand again. This time, firmer. Not a greeting, a sign of respect. "You ever need a reference?" he said. "Just say the word." I nodded once. "Appreciate it." He pulled out a card and slipped it into my palm. "You'd be amazed how many doors open when the right people realize who you are." I didn't keep the card. I didn't need doors opened for me. What I needed was answers. After he walked off, I drifted toward the bar. Caroline was laughing too loudly on the patio, surrounded by donors and board members from Dad's old foundation. She always knew how to hold court. She could spin any room like a compass, make everyone point in her direction, and think it was their idea. But tonight, she wasn't totally in control. People had noticed me, noticed her reacting to me, and that alone was a shift. It wasn't what I came for, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. I didn't stay long. I didn't need to. As I left, I passed a cluster of old veterans, near the entrance, guys in their 70s, 80s, navy pins on their lapels, talking shop the way old-timers do. One of them leaned back, caught sight of me, and said, "Is that the Carter girl, the one who went active?" The man next to him squinted. "Not the realtor, the other one, quiet one. She's still in? I heard she went Black Ops. Something about a ghost call sign." I didn't turn. I didn't acknowledge them. But I heard every word. That name, they weren't supposed to know it, but somehow, they did. And Caroline definitely did now. She'd heard it from the CENTCOM guy. She'd heard it whispered. And worst of all for her, she couldn't control it. There was no PR spin to write me out of this version of the story. Back in the car, I sat with the engine off for a minute, hands on the wheel, eyes closed. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel smug. I felt alert. Like the balance had shifted just enough to make her nervous. And when Caroline got nervous, she got sloppy. That's when I knew it was time to stop playing polite, not for revenge, not to win some old sibling rivalry. I didn't care about the country clubs, or the memorial speeches, or who was standing next to the casket in the family slideshow. I cared about what she'd done with the estate. What she'd done with Mom. I hadn't flown home for closure. I'd come because something smelled wrong. The locked-out house. The way she talked about Mom, like she was already gone. The sharpness in her voice when Ghost 13 got mentioned. It wasn't just jealousy, it was fear. And people like Caroline only get scared when something threatens what they've buried. So I made a list. A real one. On paper. First name. The estate lawyer who called me after the funeral and never picked up again. Second name. The nurse who'd sent me the message last week, saying Mom didn't seem safe. Third name. An old family friend who stopped returning my calls years ago when Caroline started throwing charity events with 6-figure tickets. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew how to gather intel. I knew how to follow trails. And I knew how to make people talk, even when they didn't want to. It's what made Ghost 13 useful. Not the guns, not the gear. It was the quiet parts. The listening. The way I could sit in a room full of noise and pick out the single line no one wanted heard. And tonight, I'd heard it, loud and clear. The estate lawyer's office was exactly what I expected downtown. Top floor, walls lined with framed Ivy League degrees and golf tournament plaques. The receptionist looked at me like I'd walked in to return a rental car, not ask legal questions. "Do you have an appointment?" "I'm here to speak with Mitchell Brandt. It's regarding the Carter estate." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "He doesn't take walk-ins." Tell him Julia Carter is here. She gave me that pause. The kind people give when they realize they recognize the last name but aren't sure how. She picked up the phone. 2 minutes later, I was sitting in a sleek conference room with a pitcher of water and a tray of untouched mints. Brant came in fast, slim, expensive suit, tan that said he didn't work much, hairline hanging on for dear life. He shook my hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Julia. Of course. I was sorry to hear about your father. You weren't sorry enough to return my calls. He sat down, still smiling. We had to move fast. Your sister handled things on behalf of the family. She's not the whole family. Well, he said, adjusting his cuffs. She was listed as executor, and she wasn't supposed to be. I cut in. Dad told me personally that he made adjustments to the will. He said the lake house and one of the properties in Street Pete were mine. I want to see the original documents. Brant leaned back. I'm not sure that's available. I'm not asking what you're sure about. I'm asking what's in the file. He hesitated. Just long enough for me to know there was something in there. I can get a copy sent over later this week, he said. I'll wait. We stared at each other for a full 10 seconds. Then he got up and left the room. 5 minutes later, he came back with a folder. No assistant, no ceremony. Here's the last certified version, he said, placing it on the table like it was a lunch menu. I opened it, scanned the pages. It was exactly what I expected. Everything to Caroline, full control, executor status, no mention of me, except as a non-dependent adult child. But tucked behind it, paperclipped to the last page, was a memo. Unofficial, not notarized. It was dated 6 weeks before my dad's death. It referenced a supplemental amendment, one that would divide certain assets, list me as joint beneficiary on the lake house, and name me as secondary executor in the event Caroline declined or was found unfit. This isn't in the final will, I said. He cleared his throat. It was never finalized. He requested it, but he passed before we completed the filing process. One profit. You didn't notify me. It wasn't required. You didn't even ask if I had questions. He opened his mouth, then closed it. That was enough. He didn't need to say Caroline told him not to call me. He didn't need to say he was protecting his relationship with her, not following protocol. It was all written in the space between words. I took a photo of the memo with my phone. No one stopped me. Then I closed the folder and slid it back across the table. You'll be hearing from someone, I said. He didn't ask who. He just nodded once, the way people do when they know they've been caught and hope you're not mad enough to ruin them. Back in the car, I sat for a long time with the AC blowing full blast. The memo burned in my camera roll. Dad had tried. He'd actually tried to do the right thing before he died. And she buried it. Not just legally. She buried me. Everything I'd assumed, that she steamrolled the process, played executor like a queen coronation, wasn't just a power play. It was calculated erasure. I called a contact from my old JAG days. He wasn't active anymore, but he owed me a favor. I told him what I had, what I suspected, and what I wanted to do about it. He listened, then said, if she intercepted that update and pushed the lawyer to hold it back, it's not just unethical. It might be criminal. 10-9. Can we prove it? If we can track the communication timeline, maybe. That was good enough for me. Not because I cared about the lake house. Not because I wanted the money. But because she'd rewritten history with my father's signature. And I wasn't about to let her get away with it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. People like Caroline don't panic when you shout. They panic when things go quiet. So I stayed quiet. But I didn't stay still. I moved into a cheap month-to-month rental near Altamonte Springs. Nothing fancy, just clean, off the grid, and close enough to hit everything I needed within 30 minutes. No one knew I was there. I paid in cash. I used a burner number. Years in Navy intel teaches you how to live without leaving a trail. First, I mapped the timeline. I pulled every email I still had from Dad, dates, phrases, subject lines. I matched those against the metadata on the amendment memo I'd photographed from the lawyer's office. The dates didn't lie. He had submitted the request for changes 6 weeks before his death. Caroline filed the funeral paperwork exactly 5 days later with a certified will that ignored all of it. And here's the kicker. Brandt's firm received an email marked urgent from Caroline's address 2 days after Dad's death. The timestamp was 3:17 a.m. People don't send estate instructions at 3 a.m. unless they're burying something along with the body. The next piece was harder. Getting someone from the law firm to talk. I didn't need a full whistleblower. I just needed confirmation that Caroline had influenced something that showed she steered the outcome, even if indirectly. So, I went after the weakest link. Her name was Becca. Junior paralegal. 2 years out of law school. According to LinkedIn, she was new to the firm when the Carter file came in. She'd liked a post from the Navy's official page 6 months ago. That was my opening. I messaged her from a dummy account with a military background and a vague inquiry about estate management. Then I offered to meet in person. Coffee on me. She picked a chain cafe near downtown. I wore plain clothes, nothing flashy, and opened the conversation like I was just another vet trying to figure out paperwork. Eventually, I brought up the Carter estate. Her eyes shifted. I let the silence hang. Then I said, "The amended memo never got filed, even though it was prepared. Curious, right?" She looked down at her drink. "I shouldn't talk about internal documents." I nodded. "You don't have to. Just blink if Caroline made it clear she didn't want the update processed." Becca didn't blink. She just stared at me and said, "She was very involved, way more than normal." That was enough. I thanked her, left a 20 on the table, and walked out. Back at the rental, I started building the file. One folder for communications, one for timelines, one for witness statements, one for what I called pressure points, things that wouldn't hold in court, but would crack public opinion like an egg. I wasn't looking for a viral moment. I wasn't even looking to ruin her. I just wanted the truth on record. But the thing is, people like Caroline don't survive truth. Their entire empire is built on appearances. Control the room, control the version of the story that gets printed. And if someone threatens that control, they hit back. So I prepped for that too. I called 2 former officers I'd served with, people who knew how to handle harassment, smear campaigns, digital trail manipulation. One of them had pivoted to cybersecurity consulting. The other now worked as a legal investigator for Veterans Affairs. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. One of them said, "Sounds like someone's about to get real uncomfortable." "Good," I said, because I wanted her uncomfortable. Not scared. Not ruined. Just enough off balance to stop controlling the narrative. Once someone like Caroline starts slipping, the image breaks. The people who believed in the perfect, powerful version of her start noticing the cracks. And when they do, they don't call, they don't defend, they disappear. I wasn't trying to destroy her reputation. I was trying to take it out of her hands. And in the process, I'd make sure my father's actual intentions weren't just something filed away in a dusty folder under "almost happened." Because I knew something she didn't. She thought I was here to fight loud. But Ghost 13 never fights loud. Caroline's assistant tried to block me at the door. I didn't blame her. She was doing her job, but I wasn't there to ask permission. I walked right past, into the glass-walled corner office that screamed luxury over legacy. Coastal art on the walls, marble desk, the kind of furniture you pick when you want people to think you worked for it. Caroline looked up from her laptop like she was being inconvenienced in her own empire. "You can't just barge in here," she said flatly. "Funny," I said. "I thought that's how you preferred things, no warning." She sat back in her chair, arms folded. "I assume this is about the lawyer. You got what you wanted, right? You got to snoop through the files. I got to see what Dad actually wanted. That's what matters." She didn't flinch. "You weren't listed in the final will. End of story." He tried to list me. "You made sure it didn't stick." Caroline laughed once. Sharp, cold. "That's how this works, Julia. You don't get points for intentions. You want something? You show up. You stay close. You don't disappear for years and expect a slice when it's convenient." I was serving my country. I wasn't backpacking in Europe. "You were running," she snapped. "From him. From this family. And now you're crawling back because you suddenly want a piece of what you walked away from." I kept my voice level. "I don't want a piece. I want the part he meant to give me, the part you erased." Oh, please, she said, pushing up from her chair. Do you have any idea how much work I did to hold everything together while you were off playing soldier? I took care of the business. I took care of Mom. I buried Dad. I did everything while you sent a condolence email from an undisclosed location. That's not true, I said. I called. You ignored me. Because you only call when it's about you. I'm calling now, I said. Not for money, not for property, for what's right. She paced behind her desk, that nervous habit she tried to hide. You think waving around some Navy badge and a made-up call sign makes you important? You're still just the screw-up little sister trying to play catch-up. I don't need your validation. No, you want the public's. You want to show up now and look noble and wounded and military tough, so people feel sorry for you. That's your move, everyone. 2007 stated. I pulled the memo from my folder and placed it on her desk. Read it, not out loud, just to yourself. She looked down at it, recognized the paper, and her mouth tightened. That was never filed, she said. But it was written. He signed it. He wanted me to have a share. And you made sure that didn't happen. Her eyes met mine, flat and dangerous. I protected what he built, she said. He was clear with me. No, he was scared of you. That's not the same thing. She smiled without warmth. You always hated that I was better at this. At everything. You knew it even when we were kids. You hated that he trusted me. I hated that you lied so well he couldn't see it. R.A.T. Caroline sat back down. Slowly. Then she said, You want to go to court? You want to drag our last name through legal filings and media stories about sibling rivalry and forgotten wills? Go ahead. I'll bury you. I'm not afraid of court. No, she said. But you should be afraid of losing the little bit of anonymity you have left. Ghost 13 sounds powerful, until it's trending next to a TMZ headline about a family dispute over beach houses. I let that hang in the air for a second. Then I said, You think I care about headlines? I've walked through villages where no one walked out. I've been on missions that don't exist, in places you can't pronounce. You think I'm scared of a headline? I'm not here to play PR chess with you, Caroline. She picked up the memo, folded it, and slid it into a drawer. I'm not giving you anything, she said. You don't have to, I said, because now I have something you never will. She raised an eyebrow. And what's that? The truth, and people who care about it. Caroline leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. You always were dramatic. I stood up. No, I'm just done letting you rewrite everything while I stay quiet. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because for the first time, I could see it clear in her eyes. She didn't think I was bluffing. I didn't wear the uniform for her. I wore it for the record. The day of the hearing, I walked into that courtroom in full dress, blues polished, squared away, no medals overdone, no ribbons out of order. Just the facts, as the Navy taught me. Let your record speak before your mouth does. Caroline walked in wearing a custom black suit with gold buttons and a face full of indifference. The courtroom was small civil claims court, no press, but every seat was full, mostly lawyers, a few local observers, one or two people from Dad's foundation, and Mom's court-appointed representative. Caroline didn't look at me. She didn't have to. Her entire posture said, This is already won. ARC. The judge, a middle-aged woman with the patience of someone who'd seen every kind of family war, called it to order. Our attorneys handled the opening. Nothing flashy. Just a petition to revisit the execution of the Carter estate based on an unfiled amendment and potential executor misconduct. My lawyer did exactly what I asked. Focus on process, not drama. We weren't there to attack Caroline personally. We were there to ask why a legal amendment, dated, signed, and requested by the deceased, had been completely ignored. When Caroline's attorney objected, claiming the amendment was non-binding, the judge leaned forward and said, Non-binding does not mean irrelevant. A.T. That was the first time I saw Caroline blink. Then came the timeline. We laid out everything: emails, calendar entries, the late-night message Caroline sent to the lawyer, hours after Dad's death, the memo, the pattern. The part where no one from the firm notified me of the change, despite multiple documented attempts to reach out. Caroline's attorney countered by painting me as an estranged sibling with a minimal role in the father's final years. She leaned hard on absence, said I was unreachable, said I showed no interest until it became about property. I stood up to testify, swore in, sat down, no hesitation. My name is Lieutenant Julia Carter, United States Navy, call sign Ghost 13. I've served for over 12 years, across 5 deployments, in classified technical operations. I didn't offer sympathy. I didn't get emotional. I walked the judge through how I'd stayed in contact with my father, the way military life allowed phone calls, emails, on-leave visits. I submitted proof. I explained my service schedule without bragging. I made it clear that my job wasn't a hobby I picked over my family. It's not that I was absent, I said. It's that my sister filled the silence I left behind with a version of me that suited her. The courtroom stayed quiet. Caroline finally looked up at me. Her eyes narrowed like she'd just realized she couldn't spin this moment. Then, I gave them the final piece. The message from the paralegal Becca. Not a confession, nothing illegal, but a signed statement confirming that Caroline strongly influenced how the amendment was handled, and that the lawyer had paused the filing after verbal conversations with the executor. My attorney read it verbatim. Caroline's attorney objected. Hearsay, speculative, irrelevant. The judge overruled. Then came the kicker. I submitted character references from 2 retired officers who had worked with my father, both of whom knew about his intention to update the will. One of them had written a letter saying, Robert Carter told me, plain as day, that he wanted to divide his estate and ensure Julia had a permanent place in the family home. Caroline's attorney tried to poke holes. Were you there when the amendment was written? No. Were you part of the family's internal discussion? No. But you claim he told you casually what he intended to do? Yes. Because we were friends, and he was proud of her. That last line hit like a steel beam. The judge called for a short recess. As we stood, Caroline brushed past me and muttered, You really brought the whole military circus, didn't you? I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to anymore. Everyone in that room had heard my record, and more importantly, they'd seen how much she needed to ignore it to keep her story straight. She was used to being the only adult in the room, the professional, the one in control. Now she was just the executor under scrutiny, trying to explain how a signed legal memo somehow went missing. I took my seat again, calm, composed, not because we were winning, but because for once she couldn't interrupt. Caroline didn't like losing ground, never had. So when the judge returned from recess and asked if she'd like to make a statement, she didn't hesitate. She stood up, straightened her suit, and did what she does best, turn a courtroom into a stage. Your Honor, she began, her voice soft, practiced, a hint of rehearsed emotion in every word. This entire case rests on the idea that my sister has been wronged. But respectfully, I believe what's really happening here is emotional revisionism. She didn't look at me. She didn't have to. She was speaking to the gallery, to the court reporter, to anyone whose opinion could be bent with just the right balance of vulnerability and venom. My sister's military service is honorable, she continued, but let's not confuse honor with entitlement. Our father respected her. He was proud, but he also made hard decisions, and when he finalized his estate, he made them with a clear mind. It's an our way. She turned, finally locking eyes with me, the way you look at someone you're about to step over. Julia was not involved in the business. She wasn't present in the final months, and she wasn't close with our mother when things became difficult. I was. She looked back to the judge. I'm not perfect, but I was there. Every week, every doctor's appointment, every late-night phone call, when Mom forgot where she was, or thought Dad was still alive. That part wasn't fake, it was true. Caroline had done those things, but she wasn't saying them to show how much she cared, she was saying them to draw a clean line between us. Present versus absent. Devoted versus derelict. And then she went lower. I also believe it's important, Your Honor, to consider the emotional volatility my sister has demonstrated in the past. The family has had to navigate that. My attorney stood immediately. Objection. Relevance? Caroline's lawyer chimed in. Your Honor, if emotional reliability is being used to question the executor's motives, It is equally relevant to examine the petitioner's history. The judge nodded slowly. You may proceed, but keep it brief. Caroline took a single, well-timed breath. There were times when Julia isolated herself completely. Wouldn't return calls, skipped holidays, ghosted the family, no pun intended. We didn't even know where she was for months. And when she did resurface, it was usually in the middle of some high-stress situation. She smiled lightly, like this was just unfortunate, not malicious. And she's trained, Your Honor. She's trained in psychological operations, in how to manipulate perception. That's what she does. That's what makes her valuable in the field. Now she was twisting my record into a liability. I didn't flinch. I didn't interrupt. I let her say it all. Because when you let someone like Caroline talk long enough, they eventually show their hand. She finished with a flourish. I'm not here to attack my sister. I love her. But I also believe she is creating a version of events that fits a personal narrative. Not the truth, not what our father intended. She sat down, composed and cold. The judge turned to me. Lieutenant Carter, would you like to respond? I stood. And I said, clearly, I don't need to discredit her. I just need to speak plainly. The judge nodded. Go ahead. I looked out not at Caroline, but at the wall behind her. I didn't want to feed her the satisfaction of thinking this was about her anymore. My service record is public. My deployments, commendations, psychological evaluations, they're all documented. There's no history of instability. There's no dishonorable discharge. There's no note in any file questioning my ability to operate under pressure. I paused, then looked directly at the judge. I disappeared during those months she mentioned, because I was in classified operations, because I was behind firewalls and locked doors with teams who don't get named, not because I was avoiding my family, but because I was doing a job I was trained to do. Another breath. And yes, I missed birthdays, I missed Christmas, I missed funerals, and I'll carry that, but don't mistake duty for abandonment. I showed up when I could, and I never tried to erase her from our father's legacy. She did that to me. I glanced briefly at Caroline. She wants this court to believe that my silence equals absence. But silence is what we're taught. It's what keeps people alive. It's what I signed up for. She leveraged that silence to write me out of the story. I handed the judge a final document, an official letter from a high-ranking officer attesting to my operational integrity, my record, and my character. Whether the will was changed or not is for you to decide, I finished. But don't let her confuse control with closeness, because I wasn't close to my father when he died. But I knew him, and he knew me. I sat down. No sound in the courtroom. Just the quiet shift of weight as Caroline adjusted in her seat, finally unsure of how to spin what had just been said. The judge had reviewed nearly every document, every timeline, every contradiction, but what tipped the air in the room wasn't paperwork. It was my mother. They wheeled her in slowly small frame, loose sweater, the kind of fragility that made people instinctively quiet. She didn't look like a woman who held court over a family once full of noise. She looked tired, but not confused. Caroline stiffened the second she saw her. She hadn't expected this. Mom's court-appointed guardian had agreed earlier that week to let her speak after my attorney submitted a formal request and supporting medical documentation. Mom had good days and bad ones. We got lucky. Today was a good day. The judge spoke gently. Mrs. Carter, do you understand where you are? My mother smiled softly. Yes, ma'am. This is about the estate, about Robert. And you've agreed to share your recollection voluntarily? I have. She was sworn in, slowly, carefully. Her voice wasn't strong, but it was steady. My attorney approached with one question. Do you remember if Robert ever spoke about changing his will? Nuh. Mom tilted her head slightly, like she had to flip a page in her memory. Yes, she said. He was upset after Julia's last deployment, said he hadn't included her properly. He asked me what I thought if he split the house. I told him it was overdue. Caroline's lawyer jumped up. Objection, hearsay. The judge held up a hand. She's not quoting legal intent, she's sharing context. Overruled. My mother continued without flinching. He printed out something. A form. Said he'd asked Mitchell to update things. Said it would take a week or two to finalize. That was the last I heard. He died 2 weeks later. She looked over at Caroline then, not angry, just tired. I asked you, remember? After the funeral. I asked if you knew about the changes. Caroline stayed silent. Mom's voice softened. You said there weren't any, that I must have misunderstood, and I believed you. Now even the gallery was still. No scribbling from assistants, no sideways glances, just stillness. Then Mom added, almost like a confession, I thought maybe I forgot. I've been forgetting so much lately. But I remember that day, that conversation. And I remember Julia wasn't angry when she found out. She just looked like someone who'd already been erased. Caroline broke her silence. This isn't fair. The judge turned to her. You'll have your chance to respond. No, Caroline snapped. This isn't okay. She's not well. Everyone knows it. She forgets things constantly. You're letting a confused woman rewrite legal history. My mother didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She just said, I forget little things, not truths. That landed harder than any argument we'd made all day. The judge looked at Caroline's lawyer. Do you want to cross-examine? He glanced at Caroline, who gave the slightest shake of her head. No, Your Honor. The judge leaned forward. Then we thank Mrs. Carter for her time. As Mom was wheeled out, Caroline watched her like a stranger walking past, like someone she'd have to clean up after later. She didn't speak. She didn't offer to help. She just sat there with her arms locked, jaw tight, teeth grinding behind that glossy smile she couldn't hold together anymore. After Mom left, the judge didn't ask for more statements. She already had what she needed. Caroline looked at me once, just once, and in that split second, I saw something I hadn't seen from her since we were kids. Panic. Real, naked panic. Because this time, she hadn't lost control of the room. She'd lost the one witness she couldn't outmaneuver. And worse, she'd underestimated the only person left who knew the difference between the daughter who stayed and the daughter who served. The courtroom was silent again when the judge returned to her bench with the ruling in hand. She didn't draw it out. No long speech, no dramatics. Based on the evidence submitted, she said clearly, including the unofficial amendment, the testimony of multiple credible witnesses, and concerning communications uncovered between the executor and legal counsel, this court finds that the distribution of the Carter estate was compromised by undue influence and omission of key documents. Caroline didn't move. The judge continued, turning pages with quiet finality. The original will is no longer considered a full and accurate reflection of Robert Carter's final wishes. The amendment will be taken into consideration. A redistribution of assets will follow within 30 days, and a temporary co-executor will be assigned to assist in a full audit. I didn't smile. I didn't even breathe for a second. The judge looked directly at Caroline next. Additionally, given the ethical questions surrounding the current executor's role in suppressing documents, I am temporarily suspending your authority over the estate pending further review. Caroline opened her mouth, but the judge raised a hand. This is not a debate. Then she turned to me. Lieutenant Carter, given your military background and the responsibilities attached to that, do you accept the temporary co-executor role for the purpose of overseeing redistribution? I do, Your Honor. She nodded once. Then, it's decided. The gavel struck. It echoed harder than I expected. People started to stand. Some whispered. Some stayed quiet. But I stayed seated. I wasn't there to celebrate. This wasn't a win. It was a correction. Caroline stayed frozen. Her attorney leaned in, speaking in a low voice, but she didn't respond. Her hands were perfectly still. Too still. Then something happened that I didn't expect. As I turned to leave, I heard someone behind me say it. Not loudly, but loud enough. Ghost 13. It wasn't part of the official record. It wasn't in the documents. But someone in that room knew. Maybe a retired officer. Maybe a courtroom observer with ties to the Navy. Maybe someone who had served and recognized the name. I didn't turn. But Caroline did. She looked toward the voice, confused, then back at me. Her face twisted, like she was trying to make sense of what she just heard. Wait, what did he call you? She asked, too loudly. I stopped, just turned slightly, enough to meet her eyes. You don't get to ask me that, I said. Her expression shifted confusion into something else. Something unsettled. Is that "Is that what they call you?" she said, like she didn't believe it, like she couldn't. I nodded once. That was it. No explanation, no bragging, just confirmation. And I watched her face fall apart in real time. Because for years, I was the quiet one, the invisible sister, the girl who didn't know how to play the room. And now? Now the room knew me by a name she'd never earned and couldn't take. She didn't say another word. She didn't follow me out. She stayed behind in that polished courtroom, where her version of the truth had finally cracked wide open. Outside, the air hit different. Not lighter. Not sweeter. Just real. I walked across the courthouse steps with my head up, not because I was proud, but because I was done carrying it. All of it. The silence, the erasure, the weight of someone else's version of who I was supposed to be. I didn't need to win, I just needed the story straight. A few days later, I got the official documents in the mail, new distribution terms, co-executor authority, confirmation that my father's amendment had been recognized in full. One of the properties, the lake house, would now be in my name. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like return. I drove there that weekend. No one else was there. The dock was old, warped in a few places. The kitchen still smelled faintly like coffee and whatever cheap cologne Dad used to wear. I stood on the back deck, hands in my pockets, staring out at the water, remembering the last time I'd been there. Younger, tense, unproven. He never saw Ghost 13, but he would have understood her. He would have seen what Caroline didn't. And maybe, just maybe, he would have known that leaving me out of the original will had less to do with trust, and more to do with the stories she fed him. That part doesn't get erased with paperwork, but at least now, it doesn't win either. Before I left, I tacked one thing to the bulletin board in the kitchen. It was the memo, the one with his signature. I didn't frame it. I didn't laminate it. I just pinned it up, like a reminder, that I was here. And I didn't need to shout to be remembered. If you've followed this far, and stories like this speak to you, real American military experiences, deep family drama, and the kind of justice that comes from persistence, not perfection, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We tell family revenge stories that matter, and there's more to come.